Welcome, Minister. Thank you for attending, and thank you to your deputy for your service. It's appreciated. I'd also like to thank your department. We were very happy to see the conclusion of the Syrian refugee program on the modified timeline, and I know that a lot of effort went into that. Many of my questions will relate to that, Minister. Under your portfolio, which departments were involved in the Syrian refugee response?
The primary front-line department, Mr. O'Toole, was obviously CBSA, but a great deal of expertise and effort was also devoted by the RCMP and by CSIS. The RCMP and CSIS in particular were helpful to the Department of Immigration and Refugees Canada in devising the screening process.
Sure. And your own department, Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, obviously would have had some...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I liked your remarks at the beginning about studying old speeches and following the money, and that's what I intend to do with my time today. On December 9th, in Committee of the Whole on C3, which was Supplemental Estimates B, Minister McCallum said the overall cost of the Syrian refugee program, which was the need for C3 and the supplemental estimates, was $700 million. And he told the House that day that $500 million of that was the total spending for immigration, his department. Minister Bryson said that other departments, they did not allocate where the other $200 million would be spent, but Minister Bryson said that most other departments involved would cash manage their involvement in the Syrian program. Is that what your departments did? They cash managed it?
Let me ask Nada to comment specifically from the point of view of CBSA, but I would note that I did mention an amount earlier of $13.6 million for the critical role that the agency played in those efforts. That's part of these estimates now, but Nada can provide more detail.
Absolutely. This money will be received once approved for it, but however, as you know, we worked on it quite a bit before, so there was a bit of cash management in anticipating of receiving this funds in Supplementary Estimate C.
So the 13.6, Minister, that you mentioned for CBSA, of the four departments you mentioned, that's the only department that will be receiving additional allocation. CSIS, RCMP, Public Safety, none of them required?
That's correct.
Do we have a breakdown on how the cash management may have affected other priorities or operations of the government?
Okay. Well, we, at least in the case of public safety, and I'll let my colleagues speak to their specific portfolio responsibilities, we manage that as a priority within our ongoing programs. So we did not specifically earmark an individual or a team. This was part of our ongoing activities, and we just absorbed it. And very often, frankly, we do that when emerging priorities do come up.
Could I ask Commissioner Paulson or Mr. Colomb if they have anything to add?
Well, I would just say in a similar fashion that the total cost to our organization was minimal and it was manageable within our existing reference levels.
My specifics, Minister, and it may be helpful, is the Government Operations Centre, which I understand was the hub of the entire operation. It's not received additional funds in subs B or C, so it cash managed the entire additional work?
Yes, it did, and that's the nature of its function, to be able to respond to emerging situations quickly. Mr. O'Toole, you do raise a point about the future capacity of the Government Operations Centre. And I think that's something that we will have to look at very carefully. This is a very important nerve centre within the Government of Canada when something goes wrong somewhere in the country. This is a place where all of the participants, not just federal departments, but provinces, municipalities, NGOs, private sector, where everybody can come together. You're dealing with a national crisis. You're all in the same room.
Absolutely.
And we
Minister,
need to make
that's why I'm asking. In the 2015-16 plans and priorities for your department, one of the risks identified was, I quote, the GOC may be unable to support a coordinated response to a large-scale event. Now, that was identified by the department before the Syrian refugee program. but you're saying they needed no additional resources, and we're able to coordinate this?
That's correct, but let me ask the Deputy Minister to comment.
When that risk was identified, we wanted to make a difference between the individual and the capacity of the team, the individuals, and the actual building. We do have a building limitation, if you wish, something that I have discussed with the Minister, and we are taking steps to address that building issue, because the capacity for the GOC to be able to coordinate and respond to a major issue is a function of the team, but also the locus, the structure of the building and its capacity. So that risk is more tied to that component than what I would refer to as the human resources, their training, their capacity to work together and deliver coordinated responses.
So would we be able to get a breakdown by department on how much spending was required and how that cash management affected additional operations?
You mean in relation to the overall Syrian refugee initiative?
Yes, because supplemental B, Subs B did not have detail apart from CIC's commitment to the program, and I think even our new members of the family, our new permanent residents, want to make sure that we spend and allocate accordingly. And there's been a lot of concern that certain programs, like the private sponsorship route for refugees, a number of other programs have been shelved to accommodate the timeline set during the election. Cash management is a broad term. I'd like to see how much it affected the budgets of your departments and what priorities were shifted to accommodate that.
Mr. O'Toole, I will undertake to raise that with Mr. McCallum and my other cabinet colleagues to see if we can present to MPs and to Canadians publicly a final report on the Syrian initiative, so that people can have all the facts and figures on how it went.
Because in fairness,
Thank you, Mr.
13.6 million is all we're seeing, and I'm sure it was more than that.
Let me see if we can put it together. I agree with your point.